News, UK, Jihadi John. Extremists not radicalized by MI5. So there are rumors that MI5 actually radicalized the people that they're fighting now. Well, if you go back into history, it's very fascinating that all the so-called enemies were trained and received not only their training, but their weapons from the very ones who became their super enemies in the end. The Mossad trained many of the jihadists and the terrorist groups that plague the world today, Al-Qaeda and all of these. So these are all groups that have been set up. Now, this mass murderer, or this brutal murderer who always wears in black, has got the acronym Jihadi John. Okay, but that's not his real name. His real name is Muhammad Mwazi, which has nothing to do with John. And then, all over the news, they plastered the image of Jihadi John beheading his victims, in this case, Foley. Now, question. Is this real? Or is this what they want you to believe? Now, all you have to do is go to the web pages and have a look at people who are in the know, in the techno world, and there are literally hordes of web pages which will tell you that this is probably one of the worst Hollywood stunt productions that you can imagine, with analysis and all of this. I don't want to get into too much of a detail, but there are hundreds of skeptics out there who say, this never happened, this is not real. So I wanted to know the various actors, who are they and what happened. Now, according to USA Today, James Foley was educated at the Catholic Jesuit College in Milwaukee. So this is Jesuit involvement again. And if you start reading about the jihadists, you will see Jesuits involved. Jesuits priests disappearing, not reappearing. Jesuits everywhere along the line. Is it possible that they are actually the masterminds training? How does the master strategist work behind the scenes? Doesn't he create the enemies? Doesn't he pull the strings behind the scenes? Doesn't he achieve his objective through Hegelian dialectic? Doesn't he create the enemy which unites humanity? These are questions which I wish to raise. Now, all of these, of course, if they are trained in Jesuit colleges, are also trained in theatrics. And if we have a look at just the political scene and the great leaders of the world, John Paul II, wasn't he a known actor? His counterpart on the other side of the waters was Ronald Reagan. Wasn't he a known actor? Yes. The governor of California, Arnold Schwarzenegger, is he not a trained actor? So there's a lot of theatrics involved. And whether this ever happened or whether it didn't happen, the world has to be shocked by the beheading. Beheading is probably one of the worst things. Now, if I go to Wikipedia, Jihadi John is also called John the Beetle. Now, the Beetle, John Lennon, was a known Luciferian. And he was controlled by the Jesuits directly. The Beetle group was controlled by the Jesuits. And he said, I sold my soul to Satan. And he's also called Jailer John. Now John is appearing just a little bit too frequently for my liking. And there are pseudonyms associated with a member of Islamic State of Iraq, ISIL, ISIS, and they behead various people. All right, so you have all of these acronyms. Now let's just go a little bit further into this. The Jesuits, Ebola, and beheadings, trying to get the New World Order going. Now, I'm not interested in the quality of this web page. Whether it's a good web page or a bad web page is irrelevant at this point, because people will take it anywhere. But what is true, that black magic Freemasonry has the symbol for the degrees 9 to 11, which depict a decapitated head by a short sword. Let me tell you a little secret. Why would they use the symbol of a beheaded individual? And why is the name John always associated with these organizations? Because John the Baptist is the mega saint of many of the esoteric occult movements. And I'll give you some details as to this. Here is the UK column. So for instance, June the 24th, John the Baptist's Day, was appointed a Masonic holiday, on which the members were to assemble, perform certain rites, and partake of a common meal. Jews and Freemasons in Europe, etc., etc., Harvard Press, etc. So now we're getting into the nitty-gritty of the matter. The Bunch of Grapes Tavern mentioned in the Poe chapter was called the St. John's Lodge No. 1. Satanist Aleister Crowley, a 33-degree Freemason who influenced the Beatles tremendously, by the way, sometimes used the alias John St. John. So when you attach an alias like John, then it is a signal that there is an occult connection. But none of the usage has anything to do with piety. Aleister Crowley was one of the most evil men on the planet, with the most evil rituals that you can imagine, which should never be spoken of in good places. So in actuality, it is a vicious mockery. What is memorialized is the manner of St. John's death. It is a constant source of celebration and a constant reminder to anti-Masons of what can happen to them. But even deeper, because now they're just thinking on a Masonic level, let's go one deeper on a Jesuitical level. It is a constant reminder of the victory of Satan over Jesus Christ. We saw it in the movie, The Passion of the Christ, where they reverse the issues. So when they behead John the Baptist, it is a symbol of the victory of Lucifer against the followers of Jesus Christ. They're celebrating the beheading. They're not celebrating the saint. Are you with me? Okay. Now, how did Paul die? In the same way. Now, if we go through the names of the popes, there are 23 popes with the name John. 23 with the name John. What are they standing for? Are they standing for John the Baptist or the other John? They don't tell you which one, but it's John the Baptist. And there are 6 popes with the name Paul. And there are 2 popes with the name John Paul. That's a double whammy, putting both into that name frame. What are they standing for, and whose side are they on? I know I'm on dangerous ground, but I'm sticking my neck out. Let's go further. Joseph Ignatia Guillotin was the physician. Dr. Joseph Guillotin was a French physician who proposed on 10 October 1789 the use of a device to carry out the death penalties in France, the guillotine. But what is not known is that he was also a Jesuit. So who is the ultimate beheader on this planet? Jihadi John or the Jesuit order? And what they did in the French Revolution to bring in their new system of government, which we've talked about in the past in Revelation chapter 11, this beast that rises from the bottomless pit with this godless philosophy, will be controlled by people who celebrate victory over Christ by beheading. So to go and be all sanctimonious now and say how evil it is that these people out there are doing this and forgetting the history of where it comes from is sanctimonious to the highest degree. Not that I am propagating beheading anyone. This is the Cathedral of St. John the Divine. It is the largest cathedral, arguably, in the world. It is the Episcopal Cathedral, which of course totally controlled by occultism and Freemasonry, as everybody who has just done the slightest bit of research will find. Now, the very name is a blasphemy, because St. John was never divine. Only Satan said that man can become divine. Now, this cathedral of St. John the Divine, officially the Catholic Cathedral Church of St. John, the great divine in the city of Diocese of New York, they don't really tell you whether it's John the Baptist or whether it's John the other one. Enough that the acronym is John. Inside, for a while, they hung up the statue of the female Christ, which is a blasphemy in itself. And it was sculpted by the granddaughter of Sir Winston Churchill, whose Masonic apron can be seen right there in the British Lodge if you want to go there. This is Masonry. This is Masonry. And in this cathedral, they also have the blessing of the beasts, where all the animals, cows and goats and bears and all kinds of creatures, horses are brought in. They poo all over the place, and then all these animals are blessed. Interesting. So, a female Christ. And here's an interesting webpage, Sinister Sites, and it tells you the destruction of New York City, including the Twin Towers, sculpted right on the building, because this cathedral is a work in progress. Everything is changed a little bit every year, something is added. Just like the Jesuits have a work in progress. And there's the pillar showing the destruction of New York City with the twin sitters and the smoke going up behind it. Just as you saw in The Simpsons, just as you saw in Michael Jackson's release. Is there something going on here behind the scenes? But not only that, they also have the Temple of Understanding in this cathedral, which is the United Nations organization which is there to bring about a one world religion, which we saw in the previous lecture has already been accomplished by the signing of the Unity of Religious Agreement. So we are heading towards a mindset that all religions need to come together. Who's the enemy? Who's the enemy? The enemy is the extremist. And the extremist is going to kill us. And the extremist is going to cut our head off. And he's coming to bomb me right here. And he's going to put a smart bomb in this place. And he's going to blow us to smithereens, etc. Fear is the mechanism of herding people into a camp. Now, I'm not interested, let me make this plain, of whether my allegories are right or whether they are wrong, whether they are spot on or whether they are off track. It's not relevant. The question is, where's it leading to? Because they say the ends justifies the means. If the end result is in accordance with what the Bible tells us is going to happen, then I know who's behind it, irrespective of whether I'm right or wrong. Amen. That's the point. So let's have a look and see where it's heading. Former British Foreign Secretary Robin Cook, a very fit man, very active, just suddenly dropped dead on his morning walk. But leave it at that. He said, the truth is, this is now, he's standing in front of number 10 Downing Street, high politician, high position in the establishment. He just got fed up and he said, the truth is there is no Islamic army or terrorist group called Al-Qaeda, and any informed intelligence officer knows this. He said, but there is a propaganda campaign to make the public believe in the presence of an identified entity representing the devil, only in order to drive the TV watcher to accept a unified international leadership for a war against terrorism. The country behind this propaganda is the United States. So he said. And then he died. So there is no Al-Qaeda. Now, any informed person will tell you that Al-Qaeda was created, funded by the powers of be in the United States and elsewhere in the world, united, trained by the very organizations which became their super enemies in the end. It's a front organization. It doesn't exist. What does he say? It doesn't exist. If it has outlived its usefulness, you replace it with another one that doesn't exist. Even though it has a name, ISIS, and even though it is prominent, and even though it apparently chops heads off of trained Jesuits. I don't believe a word of it, personally.